Kate here. Today I'm talking with Maria, who's a life coach for moms who experience difficulty in that transition to motherhood. We're going to discover how to take a deeply personal topic, the topic of being a good mom, being good enough, and struggling with all the different triggers and thoughts that you might have when you become a first mom, and discuss how it can be shared in a way where moms can see themselves as having agency in their healing and in their mental health. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what your program is all about?
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share about my program. So I am a coach for moms who are struggling with postpartum depression and anxiety and who are struggling to find any sort of joy or fulfillment in motherhood. I wanted to create a course that could support that. So if you're, for example, not ready to jump into coaching, you can do a little bit of self-study. And the course was going to be titled Healing Through Motherhood, because a lot of us have a lot of unhealed wounds. And the thing is, they only come to light when we become mothers. And then we're sort of frazzled. We have to take care of these kids, the household, and all of this. Have to be these great parents, nurturing, loving. And all we're feeling is frustration, rage, irritability, depression, sadness, lots of anxiety. And we just don't know what to do with ourselves. And so I wanted to create a course that can help mothers start this healing process so they can be better parents, they can be better mothers, but most importantly, they can be the women they've always envisioned themselves to be.
Wow, what a wonderful idea. I can't imagine that there's women out there who become mothers and expect that it's really going to be awesome, only to find out they get triggered by having a child. That's very helpful to have a resource like this. So tell us a little bit, why is this an important topic to you?
Okay, so it's a very important topic for me because I personally went through this. It was at a very rough start to the motherhood, and I realized that there were a lot of traumas that I had no idea about before becoming a mother that just started popping up, and they made it very difficult to mother my kids when I am in the throes of postpartum depression. I have no energy. I basically hate myself and the whole world. Mm-hmm. And I've been connecting to a lot of mothers ever since I've become a mother. And I've noticed that comes up for a lot of women. There's trauma that is sitting deep inside of us, sort of waiting for that trigger. And motherhood is that trigger. And then it all comes out and we're left basically to wade through it all on our own because the majority of us grow up with this thought in mind that motherhood is a blessing. It is the best, most joyful thing that can ever happen. You are not complete as a woman unless you become a mother. All these messages that we grow up around. And yes, how painful is it that you have a child and you're like, I'm not experiencing any of it. Furthermore, I'm not connecting to this child. And then the shame spiral starts and you are just thinking, I'm the worst mother in the world. No one's worse than me. No other mother experiences this. And you go deeper and deeper into that spiral. You isolate yourself. You might not even share with others that this is happening. So I wanted this course to, in some ways, be a safe space. If, let's say, you are at a point where you are feeling all of this, but maybe you're not quite ready to share, you're afraid that there's going to be judgment and pushback, because there can be, our own mothers can be very critical when we express to them that we're having a hard time, or other important figures in their life can be very critical. So if you're feeling like you need help, but you have no one to reach out to, I want you to be able to have this course and do it privately on your own and allow some self-discovery and allow some healing before you feel like, okay, now I'm strong enough to come out and ask for help. I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not weird. There's nothing wrong with me. This happens to a lot of people. And now I have the strength to go and ask for even more help.
Oh, I love it. I love this idea of using a course as kind of a bridge out of isolation, getting some information, recognizing you're not alone, recognizing that there's skills that you can learn to attach yourself to your children again. That is really a beautiful thing. So I know you prepared a couple of letters for us. So I would like for you to read the letter that comes from a mom who really wants your program. This is one that you wrote coming from the perspective of your client.
Yeah, I wrote it from the perspective of my client, essentially from me about 6 years ago. So This is the letter that says, Dear Maria, I am writing to you because I am very interested in enrolling in your course. The reason I'm seeking you out is because I have been struggling so much since I've become a mother. I never envisioned that motherhood would be so difficult and rob me of any joy or vitality. But here I am, years later, and still barely surviving. My motherhood journey started out very rough. I always thought I would be over the moon happy the moment I held my baby in my arms. But that's not how that happened. I held the baby and felt nothing. It took me months to feel anything for my child. And even then, it doesn't feel as deep as other mothers seem to feel. I care for them and love them, of course, but it's just not feeling quite right. I went through periods of rage, sadness, loneliness, and hopelessness. Eventually, my family noticed and encouraged me to reach out to a therapist. So I did. My therapist diagnosed me with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety and sent me to a psychiatrist to get on some antidepressants. I can't say if it felt like a relief that I got diagnosed or if more guilt and shame crept in. How can a mother not be happy about being a mother? Isn't being a mother the most important and joyous thing in the world? Why was I rewarded with depression and anxiety? Where was my joy? Anyway, I have been seeing my therapist and taking my meds for a while now, and I'm better than I was. But something is still missing. I'm still struggling to get up and going in the morning. I feel like I have no purpose in life. All my life has been reduced to taking care of kids, washing, laundry, cooking, rinse and repeat. I feel like I'm just floating along with no real purpose or direction. I don't remember what it's like to feel joy or happiness. I don't know who I am anymore. What are my interests? What makes me tick? What makes me interesting and lights my fire? I just feel like I'm leading a lackluster existence, and it's so draining. And to top it all off, I'm a huge believer in gentle and positive parenting, and I just can't do it. I read all the books about all these wonderful people on social media, and I just can't implement what they're teaching me. I just yell at my kids. I do the same things my parents have done to me. But I know better. Why can't I do better? Why can't I be calm and collected? Why can't I implement these things? I genuinely hope that your program is the answer to me finally being able to feel something beyond the loss and numbness I feel. I am so desperate to find my joy and my spark. I need to heal.
Oh, that's beautiful and very terrible.
Yeah. Because that's what it feels like. It feels pretty terrible to be there. And yeah, in some ways I wrote this from my own perspective, except I was the one who also never got any help and suffered through it on my own, which is even worse because you're just feeling that feeling of isolation is pretty terrible because you just go deeper and deeper into yourself and you just feel so ashamed that what is wrong with you. And it's a hard feeling to live with.
Yeah, I think that was the question I asked myself for years. What's wrong with me?
Yeah. That's a hard one.
Let's hear the positive message coming from that same woman who finishes your course on the other end.
Yes, this one will be a lot more uplifting and a lot happier. So this letter goes, Dear Maria, I am writing to tell you thank you. This program has been a life changer for me. I didn't think that I could ever get back to a place where I would actually enjoy motherhood, but I did. I am feeling so much more relaxed and so much less anxious every day. I have finally started to take care of myself, and what a difference it makes. Who knew that just a few minutes a day of doing a little bit of tapping and doing our self-compassion meditation could help me so much? I couldn't even imagine when we started that my life would be so different. When we began, I never even thought how much my past emotional wounds were keeping me stuck in an unhealthy mindset. But with your help, not only was I able to uncover why I was struggling so much in motherhood, but was also able to heal and move past some of my traumas. And the biggest accomplishment is that once I have learned to cultivate and use a compassionate voice for myself, I have changed not only towards myself, but I have finally changed towards my children. I no longer yell at them as much and am much less frustrated with them. And now I'm able to give space to their emotions without becoming so overwhelmed myself that I would just explode. I am finally much more of a mother I always envisioned myself to be. Now, don't get me wrong, I still slip up, but it's so much less now. What's most important is that I don't berate myself when I slip up. And I'm able to do better next time without having to descend into a shame or guilt spiral. I no longer find shame to be a good motivator. And the biggest takeaway from your program is that I have finally discovered my personal strength and agency. I no longer feel like the victim of my circumstances or just a piece of driftwood that goes wherever the current takes it. I now have the power to write my own story. I have the power to create the motherhood experience I always dreamed of. I am in a much better place, in a place where I have clarity about my life, in a place where I feel empowered, in a place where I feel like I can choose what I will and will not do.
Thank you for sharing that. That is beautiful. And I think these letters give us a pretty good in-depth look at what they're feeling and what they're thinking before they begin your program, and how you want them to feel as they leave your program, and what they're thinking, doing, and feeling as a result of your program. So those are key things. What are they thinking? What are they doing? And what are they feeling? What in your mind is the biggest challenge to take these moms that come in that beginning and getting them to that particular end result?
I think first, getting clients to trust that this is the thing that will actually give them transformation is probably one of the biggest hurdles. I mean, we are in a very saturated market. I will not claim I am the only or the best person for this. Absolutely not. I am one of the many women who are putting out incredibly good material and are trying to connect with their audience through their experience. And so I think it is kind of difficult to get moms to believe that, like, well, I should spend the money that I have to do this. And another big thing is the moms who are coming to do these courses are the moms who are struggling with this need to take care of themselves first the most. So convincing a woman who will not put herself first that you need to spend money on something where you will be putting yourself first, that's a challenge. I think that's definitely a challenge to get them to feel like I am worthy of this investment, and that not only am I worthy of this investment, but will actually lead to some really good results for not only myself, but my family, because a lot of moms will not do something just for themselves. Like, we are not socialized to think that way. But if a mom believes that not only will this help her, but it will actually help her family, because it will, once you change yourself and your approach, once you're not in that dark place anymore, it becomes so much easier to parent, it becomes so much easier to connect with your kids, to connect with your partner, and just have basically a feeling of peace and harmony in your home.
I think there's two things that you can do to help attract those people who need what you have. And there are definitely women who need what you have. Number one is to be very vocal about your story. And you may already do this. Okay. So be very vocal about your story, and other women who may not have the same coaching program or the same answer, but have experienced the same thing. Like, there may be women who've experienced and overcome postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I know a few, and they felt isolated. So when they see a program like yours, they're more likely to comment, to love, to share those things. So the more frequently, like, you're throwing your story out there, and it doesn't mean like you have the same story every time, but some contemplation about some of what it feels like to go through that, and how it takes the actual investing. Like, you're looking outward to fix your situation when you really needed to look inward and invest time inward. Thinking that you had to be a better mom, you're focusing on your actions, what you need to do, rather than figuring out, like, I need to heal before I can do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that story is going to help create connection. And then that being that bold messaging, like, what differentiates you from other people, because there are other people who have this message, and that's a good thing. Like, not everybody's going to connect with you. So maybe they're going to connect with, Kate, or maybe they're going to connect with Kim or Sheila or whatever. And the ones that are intended to be for you, the ones who connect with your story and your style of caring for them, resounds with who they are and what they need, is going to be perfect. Do you know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
Be very clear about your messaging and how it differentiates you from others. The other people who do this, they're like, see them as inspiration and collaborators in preventing isolation for all these women. Don't think of it as a saturated market. Think of it as like a message that needs to be promoted. And there's all these women who are doing it. And you have your take, and you have your story, and you have your style, because it's not about just the content. It's about the connection. and the connection that you offer is a differentiator. The other thing that I might recommend, and because I agree with you that a lot of women are needing to invest in themselves and may be very unlikely to do it, is to structure your course with a free workshop. So the workshop would be about why there's a need, and this would be offered free. Like maybe it's a workshop that you can offer freely to anybody who has experienced postpartum depression or feels like they're not the mom they need to be. It could be whatever guilt and shame around motherhood that they might feel. If you're offering this free workshop and you're talking about the need to identify these triggers that are causing them to spin into these shame spirals, now you can offer that workshop for free, and then you can talk about the investment for the actual course. So I would offer some value. So even if they don't afford, even if they can't afford the course, or even if they can't do that, they don't feel like they're worse off. You don't want to take advantage of their pain and their shame and their difficulty and say, I'm going to manipulate them into buying my course. That's not it. But let them know they're worth the value. They're worth doing this. The purpose of this isn't just to turn them into a better mother. Their purpose is to help them heal their wounds so they can be a better person. It's not to improve their performance. It's to maybe shift their perspective on their value just as who they are as a person. So I don't know if that gives you any ideas on that particular struggle that you see in creating this course.
I think it does. I mean, every idea is a good idea, right? Like that's why working with other people is so wonderful. You get to see somebody else's perspective of how to frame it. That's been the thing that I have been getting a story out there in the blog, and it's been okay. It's been fine as a hobby blog, and I've sort of treated it as a hobby blog, so I can't necessarily expect like it was going to explode. But I think you're right. I probably need to be more vocal about the story in a way of like as building a connection and as sort of expressing that like you're not alone. This does happen. This happens to other people. It happens a lot. And but we still all feel so alone, and that and doing like a workshop that can identify some of these things and introduce it to be like, if you're connecting with this, here's something with even more value, even more work on yourself. And then also using the course as like, well, if you like the course, but you would like more deeper healing, then why don't you work with me one-on-one as a coach, because I can do stuff one-on-one that I obviously can't put it out in the course because the course is more broad, whereas in the coaching program is more tailored to you as a person and exactly what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
Like I think I could see them as like being really good, like funnels that build on each other, and each step offers its own value, but like they do connect. And it's like, you don't have to tier them, but like you can if you want to. That's how you can approach it.
You can also add messaging to the loved ones of people who are struggling, like signs that somebody may be struggling and needs your help. If my daughter were to have a child and struggle, I could say, hey, I saw this post, and frankly, some of the signs that a woman is struggling are in here. Are you okay? So just giving people the like how to identify and approach a woman who's struggling in case there's somebody who's a loved one who does that. And the other thing that you could do is market towards or write posts to women who are expecting to have children, and that could sound like a little bit like a burst of your balloon.
Yeah, but it is good to be aware, because that was the other thing that, and I know there's more awareness now, which I absolutely love. But like even 6 years ago when I was going through, there was some awareness, but there wasn't enough awareness. Like a lot of it still caught me by surprise. Like having my background in psychology, like I was aware of what postpartum depression was. Like I was even aware of the signs. I could see it in myself. And even when somebody brought it up to me and said, you're struggling, I was like, no, I'm not. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not me. I am a therapist. I should be able to handle it, right? Like, that's sort of the worst part, is that, like, if you feel like, oh, I am a mom, moms don't struggle, like, you might even be very reluctant to anyone even saying, like, there's a problem. And yeah, it's hard to break through. And like, yeah, with the pregnant women, it's like some might actually, take on it and, do it as a prep work. And I know there's going to be plenty of like, don't scare me. So, but those are not the women I need to attract. I need to attract the women who are interested in the information, who are interested in sort of safeguarding themselves. Because the truth is, you can have the best pregnancy, you can even not have postpartum depression, but pretty much every single mom goes through an identity shift, and not every single mom is able to deal with it on her own, because it's such a big thing, and our society doesn't prepare us. Our own mothers can't prepare us for it, because the truth is, they were raised in a society that basically told them, like, this is the greatest gift to you, go forth and prosper. And it's like, okay, great, thanks. Right?
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough identity shift. It really is.
For me, it was even harder because I was working basically up until the day I went into labor with my first, and then I started staying at home. That's an even bigger shift. Like, how do you deal with the fact that your whole life you were taught that you were supposed to achieve, right? Higher education, then get a job and succeed at your work, to then be like, well, now I'm at home with the child. Like, where is my achievement? What do I do, right? Like, that's another big shift, and also a hard one to deal with.
Yeah, I can imagine. That is a huge shift for those people who use that time to go from being a very respected, educated member of society to staying at home and being a very struggling mom.
Yeah. Because you're invisible during that time, and there's no shortage of people to tell you, like, oh, you're just a mom, you're staying at home. Like, how can you be bored, or how can you be doing this? Like, you're basically sitting at home on your couch eating bonbons, where it's like any person who has ever stayed at home with a child just knows it doesn't matter whether it's your child or somebody else's. It is a lot of labor. Keeping a human alive is a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I also noticed that your avatar, your letters were based a lot on yourself.
Yeah.
So one of my strategies that I highly recommend for courses, and you don't need to do this for copywriting or anything like that, but for courses, I create 3 avatars. And I do 3 because I want to cover a couple of things. One, I want to cover the range of education, experience, and age. So I want to cover the range of age, experience, and education. So think about who is the youngest mom who might be in part of your course, who would opt in for something like this, and who's the oldest mother. Maybe you're a first-time mother, you've struggled with infertility, you finally become pregnant, you're 42 years old. So what is the oldest and the youngest? What are the range of experience? Like, how much do you know about mindset and tapping and all this type of stuff versus somebody who's brand spanking new to this? And then that's the experience. And then education, you want to think like, is it a high school graduate to PhD? You also want to think of, and that's very helpful for determining like your language and how you communicate, what type of examples you use, because they're not going to be evident to everybody at different ages. You know what I mean? So like you might refer to something at Star Wars and somebody who's 20 going, Star what? The other reason why you want to have 3 avatars is really because it gives you a range of diversity, inclusion, and equality. So considering that people come from maybe different religious upbringings, that may affect their idea of what the role of a woman is. And that's not to discount, your experience at all. You want to keep your previous self as your ideal client. Mm-hmm. But when you look at these other 2 avatars that help define the margins for who is going to opt into your course, when you look at your content through the perspective of somebody who had a very different religious upbringing that might have been contributing to why they feel like they're not enough, or why they shouldn't be allowed to work, or don't have any say in how they were raised, and so have to raise their children in a particular way. So it could bring up a lot of triggers for them in that way. Still create the course for your ideal, which is your younger version, but then filter it through these other personas so that you can pick up other barriers and other motivations that may come up and address them. Because I think you would really want everybody who goes through your course to go, yes, I resonate with this. I see myself in that course. And that's where broadening to three avatars really helps. I have one more question for you, and that is, what would be the one big takeaway that you would want every woman who goes through your course to feel? Like, what is the one truth you would want for her to completely believe?
One truth that I would want her to believe is that she has agency in her own healing, and she has agency in her own experience. that I want her to feel that not all hope is lost, that just because you're perhaps dealing with a mental health disorder, or even if you aren't, but things just aren't working out, you still have agency and you can still change the situation. And this change starts from within.
I love it. I think it's great. Let's say you have somebody who doesn't even know that this is an option. Mm-hmm. What does it take for that woman to have an epiphany, for her to have an aha moment?
Again, it depends on how self-aware she is. But if, let's say, she's not necessarily super self-aware when she's coming into this course and she's just feeling like, well, I have no idea, this just